And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week. What a week it has been, and yes, Virginia, parents do matter. As Glenn Youngkin takes out Terry McAuliffe in the Old Dominion state, a state that has turned from solid red to relatively dark blue, and a Republican carries the state. And the turning point of that campaign was when Terry McAuliffe, in a moment of incredible audacity, said that parents should butt out of their kids' education. Education had already been a pivotal issue in that campaign, and that was the turning point that allowed a Republican to win the governorship in Virginia and begin a tidal wave on Tuesday night, including cobalt blue New Jersey, where Governor Phil Murphy was taken to the wire, and there still is some question as to the outcome there. A race that he should have won by double digits, and where Democrats have traditionally won by those margins, he too was challenged, largely over an incredibly insensitive comment he made about taxes. They just don't seem to get it. And so, down ballot, it certainly appears, although now they're finding ballots, et cetera, that the Senate president in New Jersey was defeated, the second most powerful Democrat in the state, and somebody who had thrust himself into virtually every political machination that New Jersey knew, appears to have lost to a candidate who spent only about $6,000, a retired truck driver, beating the Senate president simply on common sense and an appeal to traditional values surrounding individual freedom. A great day across the country, and additional races in Minnesota, where voters rejected the notion that we should be defunding the police, and in other places where the defund police movement candidates lost even in liberal citadels. And back here in my home state, what appears to be a clean sweep statewide for appellate court justices. We talked about them specifically last week, and certainly it's certain that Kevin Brobson won the seat for Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Vitally important. And then Meg Sullivan won for the Superior Court, and Stacey Wallace won for the Commonwealth Court. And it certainly appears that Judge Drew Crompton, completed the sweep as a Commonwealth Court electee. Great day for Pennsylvania, because not only did they win at the top of the ticket, but down ballot, Republicans and candidates who believe in individual liberty and the precepts of conservatism were winning handily all over the place. And what was the Democrat response to this onslaught at the polls? Well, largely it was to either ignore what was going on, or to stick their heads in the sand, or to double down on the disastrous policies that fueled the voter revolt on Tuesday. Joe Biden coming out with additional vaccine mandates, really threatening to take people's jobs away if they don't comply with his edicts, orders, and mandates on vaccinations. Something that, by the way, he and Kamala Harris were very skeptical about when they first came out, but now want to force people to take them. I don't think there was anything in his order about natural immunity, but instead totally focused on vaccines. And here in my home state, Tom Wolf, some call him King Tom, but technically he's Governor Wolf, said that he would give time off, that's taxpayer paid vacation time, to state employees who got the vaccine. Think about that. The state treasurer, Stacey Garrity, said it would cost the taxpayers roughly $100 million. $100 million to try to force people or coerce them or compel them or cajole them into getting the vaccines. What about the people that have already gotten the vaccine? How about the people that have natural immunity? How about a whole bunch of things? But mostly, how about spending taxpayer money to do this? It really has reached absurd levels. And not to be outdone by that, Tom Wolf admits on local radio that his wife voted illegally for him in this year's election. Think about that. State Representative Seth Grove said, by the way, it might be a technical violation, but still a pretty serious violation of the law. But if you hadn't vetoed the package that we passed, it would have been legal. So the world truly is round. But one thing we know is that Tom Wolf broke the law prior to Election Day 2020. So when they say there are no irregularities, you can think of that as perhaps Exhibit 1. And yes, we have a lot this week to talk about, so it might go a little bit longer than 60-ish seconds, but the Atlanta Braves capture the World Series championship, and when they have the awards ceremony, the commissioner of baseball is lustily booed by Atlanta fans, and with good reason. Major League Baseball took the All-Star game out of Atlanta and moved it to Denver. Why? Because they didn't like the Georgia election law with things like voter identification, which virtually all Americans believe in at this point. The overwhelming majority of people think that there ought to be some voter identification provisions in the law, but Major League Baseball didn't think so. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago as the World Series was getting underway and noted the hypocrisy of Major League Baseball in having the World Series championship being played in Atlanta when they wouldn't let them have the All-Star game there. And back in my home state of Pennsylvania, somebody joined me this week in calling for Josh Shapiro to resign. The day before Josh Shapiro officially announced his candidacy, I said that once he became a candidate for governor, he should resign. He should not be running for governor on the taxpayer's dime. And this week, another Republican candidate joined me in calling for Shapiro's resignation. I hope that all of the Republican candidates and the Republican State Committee and every office holder across Pennsylvania will call upon Josh Shapiro to step down now that he's a candidate. There's both historic precedent for it and calls from virtually every newspaper the last times around for the candidate to holding office step down in order to run for governor. Bob Butera did it in 1978. Actually, he resigned in 1977, just before the 78 race. He was the Republican leader in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. And just 4 years ago, Scott Wagner, a state senator at the time, resigned his office in order to run for governor. You simply can't run statewide in a state as big as Pennsylvania and be an elected official at the same time, taking a check from the taxpayers while you're out walking around or traveling around this great Commonwealth of ours. And this week, the Dow Jones Industrial Average crossed the 36,000 mark for the first time, making James Glassman a very happy man. And who's Jim Glassman, you ask? Well, some people would say he's a rhino, and today probably would be considered that. But a former official in President Bush's administration wrote a book in 1999 where he said the Dow would roughly triple from there into 36,000, he said, by 2005. Of course, we had a few little hiccups on the way since then, including two big bursts and busts, but 36,000 it is. James Glassman, although he was off by 15 years, proves to be right. And that's a good thing for the market, for sure. And we turn this night away from daylight savings time, one of the saddest days of the year for me personally. There's a state senator who may enter the fray for the Republican nomination for governor. I told him, because he has a bill that would make daylight savings time permanent, that if he got that passed, I might consider dropping out of the race and supporting him. But don't forget to set your clocks back 1 hour and do it with a little sadness, because darkness comes upon us even more. We've talked a lot today, and I hope you've stayed with us because we've got two more quick things. First, a little clip that I think you'll like, a television commercial that's now airing across the mid-state in Pennsylvania, to be joined soon with some other ads that are similar. And last week, some folks said, why did you focus on Josh Hawley's grilling of Merrick Garland and not Tom Cotton's? Point well made. So we allow you an opportunity to view Tom Cotton asking a few questions of Merrick Garland as we close. One other thing, I know we said we would talk about Rachel Levine becoming an admiral, but you know, I'm not really thinking about Rachel Levine these days, and I'm not going to ask you to either, because for now, that is certainly the best 60-ish seconds of your week. For 55 years, no Republican governor has come from Pennsylvania's heartland, a place where we preserve history, not destroy it, where our children aren't indoctrinated and parents are in charge. where we insist on honest elections and honor all those who protect us. This is the Pennsylvania I'm fighting for.
Businessman, conservative, patriot, Charlie Giroux for governor, a Republican from the heartland.
Outrageous directive sicking the feds on parents at school boards across America. When you crafted that October 4th memo, did you consult with senior leadership at the FBI?
My understanding was that the memo, or the idea of the memo, had been discussed with the FBI before it got.
Did anyone at the FBI express any doubt or disagreement or hesitation with your decision to issue that memo?
No one expressed that to me.
No one?
To me. No one expressed that to me, no.
Because a lot of them have contacted us, and they said they did, Judge.
I'm sorry?
A lot of FBI officials have contacted my office and said that they oppose this decision.
Well, I doubt any of them spoke to me about it because I didn't speak to no one.
All right.
Made that
All right.
to me.
Judge, you've repeatedly dissembled this morning about that directive. For instance, about the National Security Division. Chuck Grassley asked you a very simple question, why you would sic the National Security Division of the Department of Justice on parents. John Cornyn asked you the same thing. You said it wasn't in your October 4th memorandum, it was in another office's memorandum. It wasn't another office's memorandum, Judge. It was in a press release from your office, right here in front of me, October 4th, 2021, for immediate release. You're going to create a task force that includes the National Security Division. What on earth does the National Security Division have to do with parents who are expressing disagreements at school boards?
Nothing in this memorandum or any memorandum is about parents expressing disagreements with their school boards. The memorandum makes clear that parents are entitled and protected by the First Amendment to have vigorous debates. We don't, the Justice Department is not interested in that question at all. It is
okay, so even in that case, what is the National Security Division, Judge? These are the people that are supposed to be chasing jihadists and Chinese spies. What does the National Security Division have to do with parents at school boards?
This is not, again, about parents at school boards. This is about threats of violence.
Okay, let me turn to that because you've said that phrase repeatedly throughout the morning. Threats or violence and threats of violence. Violence and threats of violence. Yeah. We've heard it a dozen times this morning. As Senator Lee pointed out, the very first line in your October 4th memorandum refers to harassment and intimidation. Why do you continue to dissemble in front of this committee that you are only talking about violence and threats of violence when your memo says harassment and intimidation?
Senator, I said in my testimony that it involved other kinds of criminal conduct, and I explained to Senator Lee that the statutory definitions of those terms and the constitutional definitions of those terms involve threats of violence.
Okay, let's look at one of those statutes you cited, yeah. Section 223. Yeah. That statute covers the use of not just telephones but telecommunications devices to annoy someone. So are you going to sic your U.S. attorneys and the FBI on a parents group if they post on Facebook something that annoys a school board member, Judge?
The answer to that is no, and the provision that I was particularly drawing to his attention was 2261A, which was to engage in...
I wasn't talking about 2261A. I know you mentioned that. You also mentioned 223. That's what I mentioned.
Yeah, but the only
Judge, you also told Senator Klobuchar that this memorandum was about meetings and coordination.
Yeah.
Meetings and coordination.
Yeah.
Well, I have in my hand right here that I'll submit to the record a letter from one of your U.S. attorneys to all of the county attorneys, to the Attorney General, to all sheriffs, to the School Board Association of his state, in which he talks about federal investigation and prosecution. It's not about meetings, it's not about coordination, it's about federal investigation and prosecution. Did you direct your U.S. attorneys to issue such a letter?
I did not. I have not seen that letter.
It's got 3 pages. It's got 3 pages of spreadsheet about all the federal crimes that a parent could be charged with, to include the ones you cited. Did Maine Justice make this spreadsheet, Judge?
I don't have any idea. My memorandum speaks specifically about setting up meetings, and I'll just read it again, convene meetings.
Judge, we've all read your memorandum. We've also heard you dissemble about your memorandum. I have, and the record now shows, one of your U.S. attorneys sending out a letter about federal prosecution investigation and list in detail the federal statutes for which you could be prosecuted. Judge, you've talked a lot about intimidation and harassment. Have you issued a memorandum like your October 4th memorandum about the Black Lives Matter riots from last summer?
You're talking about the summer of 2020? In the summer of 2020, there
A
were
lot of crimes committed. People haven't been
there were a
charged
lot
for
of
those crimes yet.
prosecutions, and they were under the previous administration.
Okay, Judge, what
They had
about
a lot of
this?
prosecutions.
It is no doubt, even though parents at school boards aren't within federal jurisdiction, there's no doubt that federal officials are. You keep saying senators. Have you started an investigation into the harassment of Senator Kyrsten Sinema in a bathroom because she won't go along with the Democratic Party's big tax and spend agenda? That is a sitting United States senator being harassed in a bathroom.
I don't know whether the senator has referred the matter to the Justice Department or not.
You've cited as the basis for that directive the National School Board Association's letter of September 29th. Was that directive being prepared before September 29th, before the School Board Association letter was issued?
I don't believe so. Certainly, I didn't have any idea.
So it was only prepared okay, I think that answers the
I
question.
already answered that
So
question
you
before.
keep citing the school board letter and news reports.
Right.
One of the news reports cited in that letter, which you presumably mean, is from Loudoun County, Virginia.
No, that is not what I was talking about.
Well, you keep citing news reports, and that's the most prominent news report that anyone in America has seen. That refers to Scott Smith, whose 15-year-old daughter was raped. She was raped in a bathroom by a boy wearing girls' clothes, and the Loudoun County School Board covered it up because it would have interfered with their transgendered policy during Pride Month. And that man, Scott Smith, because he went to a school board and tried to defend his daughter's rights, was condemned internationally. Do you apologize to Scott Smith and his 15-year-old daughter, Judge?
Senator, anyone whose child was raped is the most horrific crime I can imagine, and is certainly entitled and protected by the First Amendment to protest to their school board about this.
But he was cited by the School Board Association
That's fine,
as a
but that's
domestic
not-
terrorist, which we now know that letter and those reports were the basis for your
No, Senator,
this is
that's wrong.
shameful. Judge, this
That's-
is shameful.
that's-
This testimony, your directive, your performance is shameful.
That's not correct.
Thank God you are not on the Supreme Court. You
That-
should resign in disgrace, Judge.
General Garland, do you want to complete your answer on?
Okay, I wasn't sure there was a question there, but let me be clear. The news reports I'm talking about were not the news reports in that letter. They were other news reports that everybody here has heard about, subsequent reports that everybody has heard about. There is nothing in this memorandum, and I wish if senators were concerned about this, they would quote my words. This memorandum is not about parents being able to object in their school boards. They are protected by the First Amendment. As long as there are no threats of violence, they are completely protected. So parents can object to their school boards about curriculum, about the treatment of their children, about school policies. All of that is 100% protected by the First Amendment, and there is nothing in this memorandum contrary to that. We are only trying to prevent violence against school officials.